Well, Rufus, good to see you again. Thanks for taking the time.
You too, Honor. It's a pleasure.
I think we can agree that this is a little different scenery than what we're used to from seeing you back in Denmark in Rydhave. And here we are at the chili cook-off in Winchendon.
Winchendon, Massachusetts. Yes, sir.
How is the campaign so far going?
I love it. I do. I've loved every minute of it. It's a kind of a special day today because we're exactly a month away from my primary. And so we launched this campaign on November 13th, so we're almost 9 months into it, and it's just been amazing. It's everything that I wanted it to be, and just the team that we have is incredible, and it's been exhausting. I've never worked harder in my life. I haven't really had a day off since New Year's, and every day is a little bit of something like this now. And of course, we're in crunch time, so we just got to finish strong at this point. It's going to be tough. It's going to come down to the wire. I feel very good about where we are, but anything can happen in politics, and we know that. So.
What's so far been the key message that you tried to bring to the voters here in the 3rd District?
Well, look, it's a few things. I mean, there's obviously policy, but if you're talking about message, it's a few things. I'm an Obama guy. I am really, really struggling with the direction of our politics in the country, and I talk every day almost about finding out that Donald Trump was elected president on November 9th of 2016. So it was in that morning that we elected Trump where I just realized that something fundamentally shifted that morning. And I remember looking around that room at the Marriott on November 9th of 2016 and just seeing people's faces, mostly Danes, good friends of the United States, and just seeing so much fear and despair in people's eyes. And it was in that moment that I really decided I needed to come home and step up my service. And this is, so that's what we're doing. So the answer is your question, what's your message? And ultimately it is about reclaiming American values. It's about standing for something, not just against it. It's about trying to rebuild trust, to making people believe in the system. There's so much cynicism. There's so much lack of faith and trust in politicians and government. And so that's what this campaign is about, really very similar to the way I tried to be an ambassador, which was getting out from behind my desk, engaging with people, listening, having conversations, going to parts of the country, or in this case, parts of the district, that they don't expect necessarily to see politicians or ambassadors, trying to tear down walls, be sincere, be authentic, and again, kind of bring politics back to its purest form, which is the human connection. From an ideological standpoint, I'm an FDR fan. I'm a big FDR guy. I think that the best chapter of American history was the presidency, the after-era presidency, essentially coming out of the greatest crisis, one of the greatest crises the country had ever faced, which was the Great Depression, and standing for something big, not pointing fingers, not blaming others, but actually presenting government policies that tried to make people's lives a little bit better. And that's what we need to get back to. We've been sliding in a wrong direction for the last 30 years, I would say, and we got to turn that around. And so that's what I'm about.
What's at stake in November? I mean, I know there's 2 dates that matters to you, September 4th and then Election Day here in November. What's at stake? Not only for you, of course, about getting elected, but for the country.
Yeah, so I mean, for me, it's really quite simple. This is an open seat in Massachusetts. So the incumbent congresswoman is retiring. This seat will likely stay Democratic. Massachusetts, all of our federal elected officials are Democrats, both senators and all 9 congressmen. So this will likely stay a Democratic seat. So the stakes for me personally are really quite obvious. I need to win on September 4th. If I win on September 4th, I will likely win in November, and then I would be the next congressperson. But for the country, it's enormous. We simply have to take back the House. We have to take back the House, and we can't take anything for granted. And if we do not have a Congress that adheres to its constitutional duty to keep the executive branch in check, then I do believe our democracy is fundamentally threatened, and not that it will dissolve, not that it's a massive crisis at this point, but we've got to right the ship, and we've got to do it sooner rather than later. And we simply cannot let this continue the way it's been going. It's disastrous for not just the United States, but also for the world. The Trump presidency is an embarrassment, and and we simply have to turn it around. And I don't spend much of my time Trump bashing. Actually, I really don't, because I really believe that my party needs to stand for something and not just against it. But I continue to wake up every morning and just simply cannot believe what I'm reading. Simply cannot believe the politics in this country, the division, the way the President of the United States goes after journalists, goes after it goes after everybody in a way that's just so beneath the office. But you know, I think Danes know me. I'm not a. I try to walk into any situation with a smile and a degree of positivity, and try to solve problems that way. So that's what I'm trying to do here.
I'm wondering, Rufus, because when you go, you've been doing a lot of door knocking to meet voters in iHeight.
Yeah.
When you talk to the average Massachusettan, what is the vibe that you're getting? Are people afraid? Are they scared? Are they desperate? What is the sense that you're getting from talking to Mr. and Mrs. Smith?
You know, it's a little bit of everything. True, and one of the things that, and I know a lot of Danes would ask this question: How did this happen? How did we elect Donald Trump president of the United States? That's a question I was asking myself over and over again as well. And you start to understand how and why when you knock on people's doors. And remember, I'm just trying to engage Democrats right now. I'm trying to win a primary, so I'm only trying to engage Democrats, and you still understand why Donald Trump won. And that is, you know, you could knock on doors in houses in this neighborhood, you know. And we are now probably a good hour outside of Boston. So we're really outside of the Boston bubble, where there's so much growth. There's so much prosperity inside the Boston bubble. But once you got outside that, these communities used to manufacture in a way that was such a part of who they were, there were good middle class jobs. Those jobs have gone away for a variety of different reasons. And that has just left communities like this struggling. And you feel it, you see it, and you see that people's lives have just been getting steadily worse. Not necessarily dramatically worse, but not making as much money. Costs of healthcare, costs of housing, costs of education are increasing. So there's more economic anxiety. And they saw, and Hillary represented more of the same. Hillary was very much an establishment pick. And these people, and look, we're living in a state, Massachusetts, where every single county in this state voted for Hillary. So it's actually, it's not representative of the country, but you still see it. You still see it everywhere you go. So you get it. You start to get it. You start to get the fact that that sort of economic anxiety is affecting our communities. And that's what we have to address, that those sort of bread and butter economic issues, that's what we have to focus on again. And that's what I think we need to do in order to reclaim hearts and minds, good paying jobs, those kinds of things.
Already back then, when you were still ambassador back in Denmark, you talked about, after the election result was clear that Trump was going to take over after Obama, that Obama's legacy was at stake, and that changed things for you and for Stephen and for, I think, many of your colleagues back home who was back, you know, with the Obama teams both in 8 and 12.
Yes.
How great a damage so far has President Trump been doing to your boss's legacy?
Oh, it's real. I mean, I think the most obvious is the two most obvious pieces are climate and foreign policy, healthcare as well. So on climate, the rolling back of EPA regulations, emission standards in cars, pulling out of the Paris Climate Agreement, it's just nonsensical to me, absolutely nonsensical. We are on the right path here. That was not just the right moral thing to do, but also the ability to really innovate, the ability to actually have, like Denmark did, invest in next generation energy, renewable energy, clean energy, those kinds of things. We're pulling back from that on the national stage. And then foreign policy, I mean, everything from the Iran deal, again, to the Paris Climate Agreement, to the way he talks to NATO allies, which is just depressing in every way. Pulling out of the various trade agreements, trade deals, negotiations that, of course, I spent a good bit of time working on. It's depressing, without a doubt. But I got to say, I know that we can right the ship. I do. I believe that. It's the question is, will some of the damage be so? Will the damage be so will the damage be done? And I think on something like climate, you do have to worry about that. I mean, it's bizarre. We had a tornado warning today here, and in Massachusetts. We are not in tornado country. And I mean, I sound like an old guy when I say this, but I don't remember this when I was a kid. It's just different. And so no one can tell me that. And I know Denmark, you guys have had this ridiculously hot summer.
It's warmer than it is here.
I know. I can't tell you. Does anyone who tells you climate change isn't real hasn't gone outside in a while, as far as I'm concerned.
That's true. Rufus, I'm wondering, finally here in our talk here at the Chili Cook-Off in Winchendon,
Yes,
and thank you for taking us with you.
Please.
Where do you see your party going from now? Because there's a lot of stories about the left wing, Bernie versus all that stuff, left wing versus moderate.
Yeah.
Do you see that your party is united, or is it still divided as it was also in the 2000 primary?
I actually think it is too divided still. I find the Bernie-Hillary divide to still be with us to a certain extent. And we have to figure out who we are. We have to reclaim our soul. And to me, we're the party of FDR. That's who we are. And if we, and that is how we have to define ourselves once again. We have to be for people, for the average person, and do everything that we can do to lift them up. And that's connected to racial justice, it's connected to economic justice, it's connected to all issues associated with equality, gender equality, LGBT equality, racial equality. And that's who we are. And that's about standing for something. We will continue to lose if we just become the anti-Trump party. That plays down to his level. And we can't be that. We got to be better than that. We got to be bigger than that, and that's what I'm trying to do in this race too. I have my primary opponents continually bash Trump, which it's tempting. It really is tempting. I do it in the privacy of my own home all the time, but I don't think it's constructive. I don't, and that I think that it's not that I defend him ever, and I don't, but I just think that we have to talk about what we are for more than what we are against. And so that's what I'm trying to do.
Final question, Rufus. If you are elected as the next congressman of the 3rd District here in Massachusetts, what is the first of many things you'd like to see change in Washington then?
Well, it's going to be, from a policy standpoint, it's probably going to be hard. Even if we win back the House, the Republicans will probably have us the Senate, and we'll have the White House. But I still think we need to be doing something. We need to get some legislation passed that actually make people's lives a little bit better. And that may be something as simple but as important as infrastructure. Big, similar to what you do in Denmark. It's a big, fat investment in roads and bridges and public transportation. Something where you can actually see the average person sees their tax dollars being spent in their neighborhoods, and I think that will go a long way. But ultimately, I think and so that's a policy answer. On a larger, it's about the ability to work together. So, again, I mean, in Denmark, in a parliamentary system, the parties may have vehement disagreements, but you still pass your budget at the end in every December with probably 90% of our parliament voting in favor. And we are so polarized, and we got to figure out how to lose that polarization. We got to remember how to sit across the table with each other. I say all the time, I'm a former diplomat, and I think we need more diplomacy in politics. As your political parties know, I have great friends in all 9 of the political parties that are in parliament, and it was my job to sit around the table with every single one of them and try to figure out how we could work together on a variety of different issues. We wouldn't always agree, wouldn't get unanimous consent, but we did a lot together, and I kind of loved that constructive way to govern, and I'd like to bring a little bit more of it to the American Congress, because we seem to have lost it. It doesn't have to be this way. It hasn't been this way forever. So.
Well, Rufus, thank you for taking the time, and good luck.
Yeah, tusind tak.